So we do think that it was a fundamental problem, reflecting, unfortunately, an unfortunate window on our political system, that dissent, reasonable dissent, was treated intolerantly on such an important public matter. And academics and scientists and journalists who are supposed to be in the business of pursuing the truth on these matters and who have professional responsibilities to entertain criticism, treat both sides fairly, and so on, we think failed in, some of their fundamental professional ethical responsibilities at this time.
Yeah, I remember. It was also, of course, at the point when journalism and the media and the elites who were involved in what was a spasm of moralizing and activism on the question of race and everything else. It was the peak of BLM wokeness. It was when James Bennett was fired. It was when I was fired. It was when the lockstep position of the American media had become overwhelming, that no dissenting voices were allowed, especially on the question of race, whether you were not allowed to say, I'm not sure whether we live in a white supremacist country. That was regarded as an abhorrent thing to say, even to question it. I mean, just asking, what do you mean by that? And how could you disprove it was regarded as self-evidence of bigotry on your part. There was an enormous sort of moral panic that was in the elites. And it spilt over into COVID, it seems to me, in a way that was... I'm going to read listeners the actual words of Francis Collins, I'm going to ask you to talk about his appearance on here too. Quote, "What I worry about with this," he said, "is that it's being presented as a major alternative view that's held by large numbers of experts in the scientific community. This is not true. This is a fringe component of epidemiology. This is not mainstream science. It's dangerous. It fits into the political views of certain parts of our confused political establishment. I'm sure it will be an idea that someone can wrap themselves in as a justification for skipping wearing masks or social distancing, and this is my favorite quote, and just doing whatever they damn well please," unquote. What do you make of Francis's response to my questions on this podcast recently? To his credit, to his great credit, he has said, he acknowledges that they made big mistakes and they needed to have been much more humble. So I think that needs to be put into the record. But that statement, it seems to me, is damning. Damning. Yeah. Because it's illiberal. Because it's saying, instead of tanking the arguments on and saying, well, this is why I disagree with them there. This is why they're dangerous, wrong, fringe, get rid of them.
And those
Take
views...
them down. And then you have people like Greg Gonsalves, who is just a fanatic of giant proportions. I've followed this guy since AIDS, where he was also, he would have locked every gay man in his own room and prevented them ever moving an inch for 10 years if he could have. He was busy demonizing those of us with HIV left, right, and center. But nonetheless, this was illiberal.
And it's illiberal and also just at odds with what people had thought about how to handle a pandemic before COVID. And so it's so striking that you could turn so sharply that you could demonize views that were completely mainstream as of 6 months previously as, beyond discussion. I mean, this is such a remarkable time in policy terms. You're right to sketch it more broadly. It's not just COVID, but, there was a broader moral panic. And, of course, we could bring in the extent to which more educated people reviled Donald Trump. And so all of this feeds together towards a very intolerant attitude towards dissent. But it's still, nevertheless, on the scientific questions about the effectiveness of these measures, that was not established before COVID, and there was a great deal of skepticism about whether they would work, and that the different strategic plan that the Great Barrington Declaration laid out was very consistent with what had been thought as a mainstream and appropriate way to handle a pandemic before COVID.
Can I read one other quote from Dr. Collins, which is in the book? It's on the very first page of the book. And it's this. It's from the the 2023 Braver Angels panel that he was on with Wilkerson, the trucker, where he said, and this is Collins, "We failed to say every time there was a recommendation, guys, this is the best we can do right now. It's a good chance this is wrong." We didn't say that. We wanted to be sure people actually motivated themselves by what we said because we wanted change to happen in case it was right. But we did not admit our ignorance, and that was a profound mistake, and we lost a lot of credibility along the way. I mean, that certainly seems to me to be true.